Balinese is not Indian book. Section 14. Santo Saba works. Made as material for discourse to scientists based on academic studies. In an effort to restore the true history of Indonesia. The path to God. Hindus fulfill their purpose in life by following different paths. That path is yoga. Yoga here can be defined as physical, mental, and spiritual discipline for the sake of attaining peace and peace of mind. In other contexts and traditions, yoga can also be defined as trying to control the mind so that the mind does not run wild, or effort to unite oneself with God. The teachings on the practice of yoga were compiled and elaborated by sages or sages. The books containing the teachings of yoga include Bhagavad-Gita, Yoga Sutra, Hatha Yoga Pradipika, and Upanishads as their philosophical and historical basis. Yoga directs Hindus to achieve spiritual life goals moksha, samadhi, or nirvana, either directly or indirectly. The four main ways yoga that are often mentioned are 1. Karma yoga, carry out obligations as well as possible sincerely. 2. Bhakti yoga, loving God and cherishing all creatures. 3. Jaina yoga, seeking knowledge and contemplating God. 4. Raja yoga, controlling the mind with meditation, posture, or the like. A person can choose one or several yoga at once, according to his inclination and understanding. Some schools of Hinduism that emphasize devotion teach that devotional service is the only practical way to attain spiritual perfection for ordinary people, based on the belief that the world is in the Kali Yuga period, one of the periods in the current Yuga cycle. Doing one yoga does not mean neglecting the other. Many schools of Hinduism teach that the various yogas naturally blend in and support the practice of other yoga. Take the practice of Jaina Yoga, which is thought to be sure to lead one to give pure compassion, the main goal of Bhakti Yoga, and vice versa. One who is steeped in advanced meditation, as emphasized by the kings of yoga, must embody the basic principles of Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and Bhakti Yoga, either directly or indirectly. Sacred literature. According to the Hindu spiritual figure Swami Vivekananda, Hinduism is based on a set of spiritual guidelines discovered by different people at different times. Over the centuries, these guidelines were passed down orally in verse so they could be memorized, until they were written down. Over the centuries, the sages refined the teaching and expanded their arguments. In the post-Vedic period and according to contemporary Hindu belief, much of the Hindu literature is not to be taken literally. What takes precedence is ethics and the metaphorical meaning contained therein. Among these sacred texts, the Vedas are the oldest, followed by the Upanishads as the most important basic literature in studying Hindu philosophy. Other literatures that are important foundations in Hinduism are Tantra, religion, Purana, and two epic scriptures, namely Ramayana and Mahabharata. Bhagavad-Gita is a teaching contained in the Mahabharata, a widely studied literature, often referred to as the essence of the Vedas. Much of the Hindu literature is written in Sanskrit. The libraries are classified into two classes, Sruti and Smrti. Sruti, meaning what is heard, refers primarily to the collection of the Vedas, which are the oldest Hindu literary form. Many Hindus glorify the Vedas as eternal truths revealed to ancient sages, while others do not concern the composition of the Vedas with God or a person. Hindus believe in the Vedas as a guide for the spiritual world, which will exist forever, even if it had never been revealed to the sages. Hindus hold this belief because they believe that the spiritual truths in the Vedas are eternal, which can continue to be revealed in new ways. There are four Vedas. That is, Rigveda, Samaveda, Yajurveda, Atharvaveda. The Rigveda is the first and most important of the Vedas. Each Veda is divided into four parts. The main one, the standard Veda, is the Samhita, which compiles mantras. The other three sections make up the supplementary set for the Samhita, usually in prose and believed to be younger than the Samhita. The three sections are the Brahmana, Aranyaka, and Upanishad. The first two sections are called the Karmakanda, ritual portion, while the latter is called Jnanakanda, portion of knowledge. A collection of Vedas focuses on performing ceremonies, while a collection of Upanishads focuses on spiritual views and philosophical teachings, and discusses Brahman and reincarnation. Smrti. Hindu scriptures that are not included in Sruti are classified into Smrti, memory. The famous Smriti book is the Indian epic, Itihasa, consisting of the Mahabharata and the Ramayana. Itihasa is a part of Hindu literature that tells the story of the heroism of Hindu kings and knights in the past and is combined with religious philosophy, mythology, and stories of supernatural beings. The Bhagavad-Gita is an integral part of the Mahabharata, and is one of the most famous Hindu scriptures. The book contains philosophical teachings narrated by Krishna, as Avatara Vishnu, to Arjuna, before the war in Kurukshetra. Bhagavad-Gita consists of 18 chapters and contains 650 verses. Each chapter describes Arjuna's answers to Krishna. These answers are sacred words as well as Vedic teachings. However, books that belong to the Gita, sometimes called Gitaupanishads, are often classified under Shruti, because their context is Upanishadic. The Puranas, that describe Hindu teachings through vivid stories, belong to the Smriti. The Puranas contain mythology, legends, and ancient stories that are believed to be true by Hindus. The word Purana means ancient history, or ancient tales. The writing of the Puranas is thought to have begun around 500 BC. There are 18 Puranas which are called Mahapurana. Other books belonging to the Smriti include Dvimahatmya Tantra, Yoga-sutra, Tirumantiram, Siva-sutra, and religion. In addition, there is the Manusmriti, which is a prescriptive law book that underlies societal rules and social stratification which then guides people to form the caste system in India. The Book of Tantra contains the ways of worshipping each sect in Hinduism. The Book of Tantra also regulates the construction of Hindu shrines and the placement of statues. The Book of Nitisastra contains leadership teachings and guidelines for being a good leader. The Jodisha Book is a book that contains the teachings of the traditional Hindu astronomical system. The Jodisha Book contains guidelines about celestial bodies and their circulation. The Book of Jodisha is used to predict the arrival of a season. Hinduism and Buddhism. We will enter the discussion about Hinduism and Buddhism. The author remembers here so that there is no confusion about understanding when reading it. It is as follows. The original teachings of the archipelago that I described above were not Hindu, let alone Buddhism. It is the indigenous teachings of the archipelago that underlie Jain, Hindu and Buddhist teachings. That's the original Dharmic stored in Bali drawn in Borobudur. With word literacy text, one of them is Kusaladharmabhahana. In the explanation about Bali above, it all explains the indigenous culture of the archipelago. There are some similarities with Hindu teachings in India. That is what makes the basis for the teachings from the archipelago that color Hindu teachings in India. In the explanation of Hinduism in India above, it is very clear that the difference is with the teachings of the archipelago which are considered to be Hindu today. Remember the discussion above about the original teachings of the archipelago which must be called Hinduism. In the explanation of Hinduism and Buddhism here the author will raise Hindu teachings that originated from India not in the archipelago. Because the original teachings of the archipelago are not Hindu-like in India. Apart from Buddhism, Buddhism in the archipelago is indeed the original teachings brought from India. So here we are to be careful in understanding the term in the Hindu word only because it is a bit biased about this term at present. The author has assumed that the general public has generalized about Hinduism, namely considering Hinduism in the archipelago to Hinduism in India. Even though it is true, the original teachings of the archipelago that were forced to be called Hindu. This means that the original teachings of the archipelago are actually original Dharmic teachings. Hinduism and Buddhism in India. Hinduism and Buddhism share common origins in Indian culture in the northern Ganges during the so-called second urbanization, around 500 BC. They have shared existing parallel beliefs and coexist, but there are also some differences. Buddhism made progress in the Indian subcontinent due to the support of royal rule, but began to decline after the Gupta era, and almost disappeared from India in the 11th century, except in some parts of India. It continues to exist outside India and is the main religion in several Asian countries. Buddhism at some stage seems to have been taken as a response to the existing view that was the ideas presented at the beginning of the Upanishads. In some cases the views and philosophies with them, and in other cases they were compatible and inconsistent. The influence of the Upanishads, the early philosophical texts of Hinduism, on Buddhism has been a matter of debate among scholars and religious circles. While Radhakrishnan, Oldenburg and Newman believe the influence of the Upanishads is in the Buddhist canon. Eliot and Thomas highlight the points on which Buddhism opposes the Upanishads. Buddhism may have been influenced by some Upanishadic ideas, but it dispels any orthodox inclinations. In Buddhist texts, it is presented as rejecting the path of salvation as a destructive view. Later Indian religious experience was influenced by this interpretation and new ideas of the Buddhist tradition's beliefs. Support of the Indian Empire towards Hinduism and Buddhism, with visible significant evidence that both Buddhists and Hindus were supported by Indian rulers, regardless of the rulers' own religious identities. Buddhist kings continued to honor Hindu gods and teachers, and many Buddhist temples were built under the protection of Hindu rulers. Similarities between Hinduism and Buddhism. The Buddha approved of many terms which were already used in the philosophical discussions of his day. However, many of these carry different meanings in the Buddhist tradition. For example, in the Samanyaphala Sutta, the Buddha is described as presenting the notion of the three knowledges, Tivya, a term also used in the Vedic tradition to describe knowledge of the Vedas, as not text. The true three knowledges are said to be based in the process of attaining enlightenment, which is what the Buddha said was attained from the night of his enlightenment. Karma, Sanskrit, from the root kr, to do, is a word which means action or activity and often implies its subsequent results, also called karma phala, fruit of action. It is generally understood as a term to denote the entire cycle of cause and effect as described in the philosophies of a number of cosmologies, including those of Buddhism and Hinduism. Karma is a central part of Buddhism. In Buddhism, karma is the direct voluntary result of one's words, thoughts and/or actions in life. In pre-Buddhist Vedic culture, karma had to do with whether or not the correct ritual action was performed. Little emphasis was placed on moral behavior in the early Vedic conceptions. In Buddhism, on the other hand, the word one says, one's thoughts and/or actions form the basis for good and bad karma, sila, moral, in line with the development of meditation and wisdom. Buddhism carries a different meaning from the pre-Buddhist conception of karma. Dharma, Sanskrit, Devanagari, or Pali Dhamma, Devanagari, means law of nature, reality or duty, and with respect to its significance for spirituality and religion, it may be considered the way of higher truth. A Hindu designation itself Sanatana Dharma, which translates as eternal Dharma. Likewise, Buddha-dharma is a term for Buddhism. The general concept of Dharma forms the basis for philosophy, belief and practice. The main four are Hinduism, Buddhism, Jainism, Jaina Dharma, and Sikhism, Sikha Dharma, all of which maintain the centrality of Dharma in their teachings. In this tradition, beings who live in harmony with Dharma proceed more rapidly towards, according to tradition, Dharma Yukam, moksha, or nirvana, personal liberation. Dharma can refer generally to religion of duty, and also means social order, proper conduct, or simply virtue. Buddha. The term, Buddha, has previously appeared in Hindu scriptures before the birth of Buddha Gautama. In the Vayu Purana, the sage Daksha calls Lord Shiva as Buddha. Similarity of symbolism. Mudras. It is a hand gesture that expresses a symbol of worship or servitude. Buddhist depiction. Almost this form of attitude on Buddha statues is always depicted performing this mudra attitude. Dharma Chakra. The Dharma Chakra, which appears on the Indian national flag and the flag of the Thai royal family, is a Buddhist symbol used by members of both religions. Rudraksha. These are the beads that monks usually wear, and are used for prayer. Tilak. Many Hindus mark their heads with a tilak, which is interpreted as the third eye. The same sign is one of the characteristic physical characteristics of the Buddha. Swastika or Swastika. Both are sacred symbols. It can be clockwise or counterclockwise and is both seen in Hinduism and Buddhism. The Buddha is sometimes depicted with a swastika on his chest or palms. Mantra. A mantra is a syllable or several words that are pronounced in performing worship or ritual events in religion. In Hindu or Buddhist teachings, usually using Sanskrit. Their use in conjunction with mantras varies according to the teachings or philosophies. They are used as spiritual channels, words or vibrations that impart a point of concentration and ritual contemplation. Its purpose, among others, is used to beg for luck, avoid danger, or avoid enemy interference. Mantra is present in the history of Vedic religion, Zoroastrianism and Shamanic tradition, and as such they remain important in Buddhism and Jainism and other religions in India such as Sikh. Yoga. Yoga practice is closely connected to the beliefs and practices of both Hindu and Buddhist religions. However, there are different variations in the use of yoga terminology in the two religions. In Hinduism, the term yoga generally refers to the 8 branches of yoga as defined in the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali, written sometime after 100 BC, and means by the idea that an individual is an Atman or soul, or binds with the monistic entity that underlies everything, Brahman. Yoga in Hinduism is also known to be very complex, based on yoking integrating. Yoga defines specific processes, has an emphasis on knowledge and practice, and is known to be mature and difficult. The most basic meaning of this Sanskrit term is technique. The techniques of various forms of yoga are what make the practice meaningful. Yoga is not an easy or simple practice, Viyoga is what is described as simple. Yoga is difficult in reality, displaying Hindu religious faith and meaning. Many Hindus tend to pick and choose between the 5 forms of yoga because of the way they live their lives and how they want to practice in their most connected form. In Tibetan Vajrayana Buddhism, the term yoga is only used to refer to any kind of spiritual practice, from various types of tantra such as Kriya Yoga or Charya Yoga, to yoga gods, and yoga teachers. In the early stages of translating the Sutrayana and Tantrayana from India, China and other regions to Tibet, along with the lineage of sadhana practice, codified in the Nyingmapa canon, Sanskrit, yana is Adi Yoga, Sanskrit. Robert Thurman, a contemporary scholar with a focus on Tibetan Buddhism, writes that Patanjali was influenced by the success of the Buddhist monastic system to formulate his own method for this version of thought he considered orthodox. Meditation. There are various common terminology and general descriptions of the sections of the meditative method which are seen as the basis of the practice of meditation in both Hindu and Buddhist yoga. Many scholars have noted that the concepts of dhyana and samadhi, technical terms describing the absorption stage for meditation rituals, are common to meditation practice in both Hinduism and Buddhism. Most important in this context is the relationship between the 4 Buddhist system of dhyana, Pali, jhana, and samadhi samprajnata, a part of classical yoga. Also, many of the Vajrayana, Tibetan practices of the generational stage and meditative method with the term chakra expression, inner energy channel, nadi, and kundalini, are called tumo in Tibet. Difference between Hindu and Buddhist. Although there are similarities in terminology, there are also differences between the two religions of Hinduism and Buddhism. There is no evidence to suggest that Buddhism performs sacrificial events like that of the Vedas, the chanting of deities as in the Vedas, or the hierarchical term for caste. The main differences will be mentioned below. God. Gautama Buddha is very ambiguous about the existence of a creator as well as Lord Brahman and eternal Atman, and rejecting that view. Various sources from the Pali Canon and others indicate that Buddha taught the belief in deities. The Creator is not essential to attaining liberation from suffering, and may choose to ignore such theological questions because of their often conflict rather than peace. The Buddha did not deny the existence of the popular deities of the Vedic ranks, but argued that devas, who may be in a more sublime state than humans, are still trapped in the same samsaric cycle of suffering as other beings and are not necessarily worthy of worship and worship. The focus of Gautama Buddha is the Noble Eightfold Path. It is also thought that while it inherits many practices and ideologies from the previous Hindu yoga tradition, i.e., teachings that deviate from the teachings of the Bhagavad-Gita and earlier works of the Dharmic religion, in that this view of liberation, nirvana or moksha, is not achieved through union with Brahman, divinity, realization or worship. In contrast, Buddhist teaching centers like what Eknath Easwaran describes as the psychology of desire, which attains liberation from suffering by the self-annihilation of will, selfish desire and lust. This is not to say, however, that the teaching was inextricably linked with the previous Hindu tradition, nor was and cannot be separated from Vedic theology. The Buddha, as depicted in the Pali scriptures, namely the Agamas, established an important trend in Buddhist non-theism by establishing a rather non-theistic view of the idea of an almighty God, generally ignoring these issues as irrelevant to his teachings. However, In many verses in the Tripitaka Deva in Sanskrit, are mentioned, and specific instances mention individuals being reborn as gods, or gods being reborn as humans. Buddhist cosmology recognizes the various levels and types of gods, but none of these deities are considered to be the creators of the world or mankind. 1. The Buddha taught that attachment to people is the cause of sorrow when death occurs, and therefore proposes detachment from people. Hinduism, although proposes detachment from action and emphasizes task performance or dharma, is not focused solely on it. Differences in Hinduism. Lord Shiva describes death to be the journey of the immortal soul in pursuit of moksha, and therefore a fact of life. 2. While Buddhism says going to the forest for meditation is an ongoing thing since childhood, this is seen as escapism by Hinduism. Hinduism allows for this to happen only after doing all the dharma or duties of one's life, from studying the scriptures, work to support children and families, and care for the elderly, and last, after all the dharma done, then to the forest and slowly meditating until physical disintegration and to attain the ultimate truth or Brahman. 3. Buddhism describes several causes of sadness in society. Therefore, Buddhism teaches that the remedy for sorrow is detachment and non-involvement, non-action or negative action. Hinduism, on the other hand, explains that neither sadness nor happiness is due to karma, or past actions, and bad karma can be overcome and good karma can be obtained by following dharma or right obligation, pro-action or positive action, which will ultimately give moksha, i.e. overcoming the life cycle and joining Brahman. Ceremonies and rituals. In later traditions such as Mahayana Buddhism in Japan, the Shingon fire ritual, Homa, Yagna, and Uraban, Sanskrit, Alambana, originated in the Hindu tradition. Similar events are common in Tibetan Buddhism. Both Mahayana and Hindu Buddhism share common ceremonies, such as the Homa purification rite Havan, Yagna in Sanskrit prayers for the ancestors and the deceased, Alambana in Sanskrit, Uraban in Japanese. Nirvana. The word nirvana, Pali, nibbana, was first used in a technical sense in Buddhism, and cannot be found in any of the pre-Buddhist Upanishads. This can be found in the Jain text. The use of the term in the Bhagavad-Gita may be a sign of the strong Buddhist influence on the Hindu mind. Although the word nirvana is absent from the Upanishads, the word itself predates the Buddha. It must be remembered that nirvana is one of the many things for salvation that occurs in Orthodox Buddhist scriptures. Other terms which arise are vimoksha, or vimutti, implying salvation, and liberation, respectively. Closing square bracket. Some of the more synonymous words used for nirvana in the Buddhist scriptures are moksha, moksha, meaning liberation, and kevala, kaivalya, meaning wholeness. These words are given a new Buddhist meaning. The concept of Atman was rejected by the Buddha. Terms such as anatman, not self, and shunyata, emptiness, are at the heart of all Buddhist traditions. The permanent transcendence of belief in a separate existence from self is an integral part of the enlightenment of arhats. The Buddha rejected the theoretical view of the oneness soul or immanent identity in all things. After we know the difference between what the author calls the archipelago's original teaching, the author concludes that the original teachings of the archipelago which underlie Hinduism, Jain Buddhism and Hinduism, and knowing about Hinduism, Buddhism in India. Now we will try to understand the word Jambudvipa, which this word is the main philosophy of India and the original teachings of the archipelago, which is often referred to as Meru. What the authors present to support the conclusion that the original teachings of the archipelago which became the basis of teachings in India recorded this in the term Jambudvipa. This term, according to the author, is the archipelago which is currently called the island of Java, which in the time before the ice melted was named Sunda land, with the Lemurian civilization then continued the Atlantic civilization, all of which existed and was centered in the Indonesian archipelago. Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa. Sanskrit is the Dvipa, island, or continent, of the terrestrial world, which is thought to exist in the cosmological philosophy of Hinduism, Buddhism and Jainism, which is the realm in which ordinary people live. The word Jambudvipa literally refers to land of the guava tree, where jambu is the species name, also called Jambule, and Dvipa means island, or continent. The book Surya Siddhanta, an astronomical text, refers to the northern hemisphere of the earth as Jambudvipa, while the southern hemisphere is referred to as Patala. Jambudvipa in a Puranic pre-Vedic cosmological description. According to the Puranic astronomy, the entire cosmos is divided into 7 concentric island continents, Saptadvipa Vasumati, separated by 7 surrounding seas, each of which is double the size of the previous one outward from the inside. The 7 continents of the Puranas are stated as Jambudvipa, Plaksadvipa, Salmalidvipa, Kusadvipa, Krunkadvipa, Sakadvipa, and Pushkaradvipa. The 7 oceans each consist of salt water, sugarcane juice, wine, ghee, curd, milk and water. The Markandeya Purana describes Jambudvipa as an area in the south and north in the middle of a wide and high plateau. The mountainous plateau area forms a varsha named Isla Vrta or Maravarsha. At the center of Isla Vrta lies the gold of Mount Meru, the name of the king of the mountains. At the peak of Mount Meru, there is a large city with the seat of Lord Brahma, known as Brahmapuri. Surrounding Brahmapuri 8 cities, one from Lord Indra and the other 7 devatas. The Markandeya Purana and the Brahmanda Purana divide the Jambudvipa into 4 broad regions shaped like the 4 petals of a lotus flower with Mount Meru at the center like a pericarp. The city of Brahmapuri is said to be covered by a river, known as Akash Ganga. Akash Ganga is said to bring out water from Lord Vishnu's feet, and after washing the lunar area it fell through the sky, and after circling the Brahmapuri, split into 4 mighty rivers, which are said to flow in 4 opposite directions from the landscape of Mount Meru and irrigate the vast lands of Jambudvipa. The common names of Dvipas, having their varsas, 9 for Guava Dvipa, 7 for other Dvipas, with mountains and rivers in each varsa, are given in several Puranas. There is a different set of names, however, in other Puranas. The most detailed geography is that described in the Vayu Purana. Jambudvipa in descriptions of Buddhism. In Buddhist cosmology it divides the Bhumala, earth circle, into 3 separate levels. Kamadhatu, desire of nature, Rupadhatu, form of nature, and Arupyadhatu, formless nature. Within Kamadhatu lies Mount Semeru, which is said to be surrounded by 4 continental islands. The southernmost island is called Jambudvipa. The other 3 continents of Buddhist records around Sumeru are inaccessible to humans from Jambudvipa. Jambudvipa is shaped like a triangle with the obtuse point facing south. In the center is a giant guava tree, which is taken to be the name of the continent, which means Guava Island. Jambudvipa, one of the 4 Mahadvipas, are great continents, which belongs to Kakavala and is ruled by Kakavati. It is grouped in the Sinaru mountain range. Jambudvipa is Himava with 84,000 peaks, lakes, mountains. This continent derives its name from the guava tree, also called the dragon, which grows there. Its trunk is 15 yojanas in thickness, its branches are 50 yojanas long, under its shade 100 yojanas wide and 100 yojanas high. In the text in the book about this tree, Jambudvipa is also known as Jambusanda, SN. Verses 552, SNA. I. 121 continent. Home to 10,000 yojanas wide. Of 10,000, 4,000 are covered by oceans, 3,000 by mountains, while 3,000 are inhabited by people. SNA. E.437, UDA.300. Jambudvipa is the region where humans live and is the only place where beings can become enlightened by being born as humans. It is in Jambudvipa that one can receive the gift of Dharma and come to understand the 4 noble truths, the 8 noble paths, and finally realize liberation from the cycle of life and death. The references are from the Mahavamsa Buddhist text. Jambudvipa in description of Jainism. According to Jain cosmology, Jambudvipa is at the center of Madhyaloka, or the middle part of the universe, where humans are. Jambudvipa Prajnapti are treatises on the island of trees. In Jainism, Rosapple contains a description of Jambudvipa and the biographical life of Abba and Raja Bharata. Trilokasara, Essence of the 3 Worlds, Triloka Prajnapti, Treatise on 3 Worlds, Trilokadipika, Illumination of 3 Worlds, and Setrasamasa, Jain Summary of Geography, are other texts which provide details of Jambudvipa and Jain cosmology. Madhyaloka consists of many island continents surrounded by oceans, the first 8 of which are named. Continent, island name. Ocean. Jambudvipa. Lavanoda, sea salt. Gotki Kand. Kalota, Black Sea. Puskarvardvipa. Puskaroda, ocean lotus. Varunvardvipa. Varunota, ocean of Varun. Shirvardvipa. Shiroda, ocean of milk. Grutvardvipa. Ikshuvardvipa. Iksuvaroda, sugarcane sea. Nandishwardvipa. Nandishwaroda. Mount Meru is the center of the world surrounded by Jambudvipa, a circle forming a diameter of 100,000 yojanas. Jambudvipa continent has 6 mountains, dividing the continent into 9 zones, etc. The zone names are 1. Bharat Kshetra. 2. Mahavidya Kshetra. 3. Aravat Kshetra. 4. Ramyakwas. 5. Hariwas. 6. Haranivat Kshetra. 7. Hemavat Kshetra. 8. Devkuru. 9. Uttarkuru. Siwa Buddha. Teachings of Siwa Buddha. Vedavyasa is a composer of the Mahabharata. He composed 5 sloka in the Mahabharata which are organized into the Mahapurana, main Purana. This Purana he compiled from the original text of the Purana book known as the Samida Purana. The Purana has 5 characteristics called Panka Laksana which describe 5 different things, namely 1. Sarga, creation of the universe. 2. Pratisarga, smelting and re-creation. 3. Manvantara, various periods of time. 4. Vamsa, lineage of kings. 5. Vamsanu Karita, Sisila mankind. Purana is sacred knowledge which is the basic knowledge for further study of the Vedas and Upanishads, because this story comes from Purakala, ancient times, and as a complement, Purana, to Vedic knowledge. According to the Purana, the universe has 3 characteristics, namely 1. Animal. Intelligence, purity, refinement, orderly, obedience, balance, light, unity. 2. Rajas. Dynamic, energy, activity, change, mutation, desire, passion, birth, creation. 3. Tamas. Namely darkness, sluggishness, destruction, death, neglect, carelessness, refusal, neglect, obstruction and limitations, reluctance to change. Purana is also classified into Sattvika Purana, Rajasika Purana and Tamasika Purana, and Shiva Purana is a Purana that is included in Tamasika Purana. Shiva Purana is the 4th Purana of the 18 Mahapurana which generally glorifies the name Shiva from other gods or Savalas charisma which is mostly contained in the Shiva Purana. According to the tradition recorded in the Vayavya Samhita, the Venkateshvara Press edition, the original text is known as the Saiva Purana, containing 12 Samhitas and 100,000 slokas. By Vedavyasa, sorted and compressed into 24,000 slokas. He taught his student Romaharshana. Regarding the process of creation, in the Shiva Purana it is stated that at the beginning of the creation the universe was still empty, there was only Brahman, divine essence, which was useless, spreading everywhere. Then the water filled Vishnu's universe in the form of Narayana sleeping in a vast ocean and a lotus appeared from his navel and Brahma was born from that lotus. Brahma, confused about his existence and the empty universe, explored the lotus stalk, but he did not find the cell and finally gave up. A magical voice ordered him to meditate. After 12 years, the 4-armed Vishnu appeared and addressed Brahma as Nek. Brahma did not recognize Vishnu and Vishnu explained that Brahma was created from his body. Brahma was not satisfied with this and fought against Vishnu. Then a linga, Shiva form, appeared among them. Because Brahma, in the form of a swan, traced the top of the linga, while Vishnu in the form of a wild boar traced the base. They searched for up to 4,000 years, but could not find the end of the base. They then prayed at the original place and after 100 years a holy voice was heard. Om, chanted, as the appearance of Shiva with 5 heads and 10 hands. Vishnu inquired about the existence of Shiva and Shiva explained that the 3 of them are one entity divided into 3. Brahma is creator, Vishnu the preserver and Shiva himself the destroyer. Rudra is a being that will arise from Shiva's body but Shiva and Rudra are one. So Brahma was assigned to create and Sivan disappeared. Brahma and Vishnu returned to their original forms. The union of Vishnu and Shiva forms listed by Vishnu Purana, Bhagavata Purana, 4.30.235.17.22.23, 10.14.19, Brahma Samhita 5.45, and Shiva Purana mentions that at the time of awakening Vishnu became Brahma when he created the world and Shiva when merged again. Shiva is also said to be the manifestation of Vishnu in the Bhagavata Purana, and in the Shiva Purana Shiva plays a role in creating, maintaining and dissolving the world and it is said that both Vishnu and Shiva originate from the manifestation of Shiva. However, the visible combination is in the form of Harihara as the form of Vishnu, Hari, and Shiva, Hara. These two forms are also called Harirudra, which appears in the Mahabharata epic and also as Mahabaleswara or power of all powers in the story where Ravana received the gift of Shiva phallus from Shiva, with the condition that he must carry it wherever he goes. When he was almost near, he stopped for a moment to unwind, he stopped for a moment to clean himself and met Vishnu, who was disguised as a hermit, and left the phallus for a moment. After Ravana left, then Vishnu put it on the ground and put it on the ground. When Ravana returns, he cannot move the linga and remains so to this day. Thus, from the point of view of the Purana and Samhita, Shiva Buddha in Bali. In Bali, Shiva Buddha and Vaisnava were merged into Hinduism, which is now in Bali by Mpu Kucharan. Meanwhile, the religious history of the Balinese is the same as that of the Tibetans. Before converting to Buddhism, the Tibetans had a Bon religion. Buddhism and Bon eventually merged like Shiva Buddha in Bali. The incident occurred during the reign of king and wife Gunapriya Dharmapatni, Udayana Warmadewa, who reigned in Bali in Kaka year 910 to 988. At that time, the population of the island of Bali was the majority of Balinese Aga people, native Balinese. Then immigrants from Java were called Balinese, so there were Balinese Aga and Balinese, who had long embraced and adhered to the religious teachings of people from various forces, sect. Most of them are from the Indra sect as well as those from the Bayu, Kala, Brahma, Vishnu, and Swayambhu sects. Thus in Bali there are 6 sects which in practice differ from one another. These differences eventually led to conflicts between one sect and another, which led to tensions and disputes within the Balinese Aga community. In the explanation of Balinese culture, there are similarities, especially in terms of names. That does not mean it is Hindu or Buddhist teachings India, but the similarity is what underlies the conclusion that the Indian teaching called Hinduism originated from the archipelago. In this case, it is reflected or recorded in Balinese culture. Prambanan in Yogyakarta is Trine, Trimurti, from left to right: Brahma temple, Shiva temple, and Vishnu temple. Trimurti are the 3 powers of Brahman, Sanghyang Vidhi, the title of God in Dharmic teachings in creating, maintaining, dissolving nature and its contents. Trimurti consists of 3, namely: 1. Lord Brahma, meaning creator, Utpathi. Sakti, Devi Saraswati, who is the goddess of knowledge. Weapon, bow, symbol, A. Red. 2. Lord Vishnu, meaning keeper, Stiti. Sakti, Devi Lakshmi or Shri. Weapon, disc, symbol, U. Black. 3. Lord Shiva, meaning fuser, Pralina. Sakti, goddess Durga, Uma, and Parvati. Weapon, trident, symbol, M. Color, 5 colors. When the symbols of the 3 gods are combined, it will become Aum, which is pronounced Om, Om, which is a sacred symbol of Hinduism. Balinese Hindu god, Lord, whom the Hindus often call Brahman. In the Brahmasutra II book it is stated that God is the origin of all this. So God Almighty is the origin or source and at the same time the return of the entire universe and its contents. In Hindu religious belief, Brahman or God is only one, there is no second, but because of his greatness and glory, the sages and wise people call it by various names. Regarding divinity, it is contained in several sacred verses of Balinese Hinduism. Believing in God Brahman, Hyang Vidhi, which is part of the main belief of the Hindu community, Pankasrata. Paranamam, God is most high and abstract, eternal is not impersonal, non-existent, intangible, nirguna, without use, and Brahman. God or Brahman in this abstract form in Bali is called Sanghyang Suing, Sanghyang Embang, Sanghyang Sunya. Because it is formless, it is difficult to imagine and think about Asintya, Bali. 1. Vyahanama, God lay on the snake in the sea of milk. This image of God could only be seen by the gods. In Bali such an explanation is called Hana Tan Hana, existence not existence, meaning that God is believed to exist, but cannot be seen. 2. Vibhavanama, God in this form is called Avatara, descending across. God. He is also commonly called Saguna or Sakara Brahman, personal God. The visualization can also be plants, animals, unanthropomorphous, soma plants, fish, turtles, wild boar, Garuda. Half-human animal, semi-anthropomorphous, Hyagarva is a man with a horse's head, Natrasimha is a man with a lion's head. The human form with all its advantages, anthropomorphous, such as Vamana, Sri Rama, Krishna, Bhagavan Sri Satya Narayana. Between the names Atma, God permeates everything in the form of Atma or divine substance. Everything is Brahman, monism. 3. Archananama. God manifested in the form of Archa or Pratima, mini replica, like a statue in various materials and forms. At the Nirguna Brahman level of understanding, God is often mentioned as apramaya, that is, omnipotence, which is difficult to imagine through the five senses because he is very refined and perfect. Ananta, that is, omnipotence is described as infinite, he is everywhere, and he is able to change everything he wants. Apamya, namely the omnipotence of Hyangwidi, who is very difficult to compare. Because all the creatures in the universe do not match his omnipotence. Anamaya, namely the most holy. He is very noble, never suffered from a disease. Mahasukma, namely the supernatural who is very subtle. Sarvagata, that is, the supreme being, the greatest covering the entire universe. Dhruva, which is very calm, motionless, stable yet everywhere. Ayayam, that is most perfect, even though he fills the entire universe, his perfection does not diminish. Aiswara, namely the king of the universe. He rules the universe, and no power can control him. Swayambhu, that is, the absolute in everything, was not born because he existed by himself. Brahman, God, has three main aspects, namely Sat, sit, Ananda. 1. Sat, as the only one, there is no other existence apart from him. With his power, Brahman has created many forms, colors, and many attributes in this universe. Planets, humans, animals, plants, and things called inanimate objects come from God and return to God when the pralaya time comes. There is not a single object in this universe that cannot be reunited with God, because there is no other thing or substance in this universe apart from God. 2. Sit, as omniscient. He is the source of knowledge, not religious knowledge, but the source of all knowledge. With knowledge, this world becomes developing and evolving, from a simple form moving towards a perfect form. From avidya, absence of knowledge, kekarangtahuan, to vidya or omniscient. 3. Ananda, is eternal happiness that is free from suffering and joy and sorrow. The Maya created by Brahman creates illusions, but it does not have the slightest effect on Brahman's happiness. In essence, all the joys, difficulties, and pleasures that are brought about by matter have their origin in Ananda as well. The difference is only in degree. The lowest happiness is in the form of instinctive pleasure that an animal has when it comes to eating food and sexual activity. The higher level is temporary pleasure, which is then followed by suffering. The highest level is liking tan pawali dukkha, eternal happiness, free from attraction or attachment to worldly things. This universe is a fragment of God. Brahman has Prabhava as the origin of everything that exists. Brahman is not limited by time, place, and state. Time and place are the powers of Maya, the Sanskrit term for illusory things, namely a state that always changes in name and form depending on time, place, and state. Brahman. The soul or Atma which sustains this realm from the lowest being to the purest human is the higher Brahman element. As for the objects, matter, in this universe are the lower Brahman elements. Although the universe is a creation, it is not located outside of Brahman but in the body of Brahman. God, who is omnipresent, is also present in every living thing, inside and outside the world, immanent and transcendent. God is pervasive in all places and is everywhere, Vyapi Vyapaka, and is unchanging and eternal, Nirvikara. In the Upanishad it is stated that Hyangwidi is the ear of all ears, the mind of all thoughts, the utterance of all speech, the breath of all the breaths, and the eyes of all the eyes. But Hyangwidi is supernatural, Maha Suksma, and abstract but exists. Because God is everywhere, he knows everything. There isn't anything he doesn't know. There is nothing that can be hidden from him. God is the great witness of all that exists and is happening. Because this is the nature of God, people cannot run anywhere to hide their actions. Wherever you run, you will always meet him. There is no deserted place that escapes his presence. Even though God is always present and pervasive in all places, it is difficult to see by the ordinary eye. Our senses can only perceive what is seen, heard, tasted and felt. His abilities are limited, whereas God is most perfect and infinite. In the Vedas it is stated that God is formless, nirupam, handsless and legless, nirkaram nirpadam, does not have a sensation, nirindriyam, but God can know everything in a being. After all, Hyang Widi was never born and never aged, never decreased nor increased, but he is omnipresent and all-knowing everything in this universe. God has power over all and is one or one. God Almighty, Almighty, who is beyond the mind. The unseen is called by names according to the range of the mind, but he is only one. Almost all books explain the existence of God, where God is essentially present in all creatures and God is also single, like the sun shining on this universe. Because God is beyond the reach of the mind, people imagine various things according to their abilities. One God, one, he called by many names according to his function. He was called Brahma as the creator, Vishnu as the maintainer and Shiva as the fuser, neutralizer. Many other calls. He is omniscient, everywhere. Therefore there is nothing that we can hide from him. People worshipped him in many different ways at different places. It is to him that people surrender themselves, asking for his protection and guidance so that they may find a path of light through life. God in Hinduism is a supreme essence that permeates the entire universe. This description of God Almighty, even though we have tried to describe God as fully as possible, is still very limited. Therefore, the Upanishad books state that any definition or meaning intended to impose limits on an infinite God does not reach his greatness. So the Upanishads say there is no proper definition for him, neti, na plus iti, not this, not this. To understand God, there is no other way except to deepen religious teachings, ask for explanations from teachers who are experts in their fields who are able to realize divine teachings in their personal life. Meanwhile, the Vedic scriptures and including the Vedanta scriptures, Upanishad, are the source most recognized for their authority in explaining Brahman, God Almighty. In Bali we have found a paperback named Widi Papankatan which contains legal court decisions such as jurisprudence. Likewise the name Widi Sastralantar, which means knowledge of Widi theology, as well as other ancient Javanese literature. The definition of Vidi written in ancient Javanese is Widi, as the creator, highest order or order, rule, of the universe, fate, the highest authority is in line with the meaning contained in the Veda Susutra. Thus Sang Hyang Widi is God as the creator of the universe. God as Widi is sitting in the outer area of Akasa, namely in the sky. In this sense, of course, God Almighty is described as impersonal God. When Sang Hyang Widi is asked to come down to receive offerings, then at that time he will manifest in his mind. These main forms are called Trimurti, Brahma, Visu, Shiva. The name Sang Hyang Widi Wasa, means the one who destines, the Almighty, which in Balinese is translated as Sang Hyang Accusation or Sang Hyang Taita. This name is a very common name, the description of which is not further mentioned in the papyrus literature. Bhattara Siwala is his nickname in Lontar literature, whose image we always encounter both in religious literature, such as in the Lontar's Bhuwanakosa, Raspadatatva, Tatwajanana, Mahanana, Ganapadatatva, Bhuwanasangsepa and so on. Likewise, at the time of worship ceremonies, statues and places of worship. The word Shiva means, one who gives good luck, mercy, who is kind, forgiving, pleasant, gives lots of hope, who is calm, happy and the like. Sang Hyang Shiva in moving his law of omnipotence is supported by his Saktanya Durga or Parvati. Hyang Shiva as the Supreme Lord is a remover, the pralaya or praline aspect of the universe and everything in it. The very feared Shiva was called Rudra, whose voice was thunderous and terrifying. Shiva who has not been affected by Maya, various attributes such as Guna, Sakti and Swabhava, is called Paramasiva. In this state he is also called a Sintyarupa or noxious and intangible, impersonal God. The word Brahman is the neutrum form of Brahma, which means that which is growing, evolving, which is getting bigger, which is overflowing from itself, and the like. His creation arises from his self, just as the Veda arises from his breath. The omnipotence of Hyang Brahma as the creator of the universe is supported by his magic called Sarasvati, the goddess of knowledge and wisdom who inspires the good of mankind. When called Brahma, He is the main manifestation of the Supreme Lord as creator, thus Brahma is currently a personal god. Brahma is described as having 4 faces, Kadarmaka, and others. Thus Hyang Widi is Brahman, a god who does not exist in the human mind, impersonal god, is being called Brahma, when he has taken a form, personal god, in creating the universe and everything in it. His main manifestation is Vishnu. Vishnu, the manifestation of the Supreme Lord, takes care of the universe and everything in it. He who makes everything alive. The word Vishnu means worker, who permeates everything and the like. The omnipotence of Sanghyang Vishnu in maintaining the universe and everything in it is supported by his Saktanya named Shri and Lakshmi. Based on the description above, it is clear to us that Hyang Widi Wasa is one god. He is also called Brahman, in the form of neutrum, Brahma, in the form of masculine, as the Hyang Shiva, the most gracious, and various other names. When the Supreme Lord is worshipped with various offerings, then he is worshipped as a personal God. Because God is beyond the reach of the mind, people imagine various things according to their abilities. One God, he called by many names according to his function. He was called Brahma as the creator, Vishnu as the maintainer, and Shiva as the fuser, neutralizer. Many other calls. He is omniscient, everywhere. Therefore there is nothing that we can hide from him. People worshipped him in many different ways at different places. It is to him that people surrender themselves, asking for his protection and guidance so that they may find a path of light through life. Balinese people worship Pratima or Aka. Pratima or Aka is a symbol of God Bhattara, which is used as a tool to worship Sanghyang Widi Wasa. The use of Pratima or statues as a means of worshipping God took place before the Singasari and Majapahit kingdoms. Now, the use of Pratima is rarely done. Pratima and statues are now sacred heirlooms. The word statue comes from the Sanskrit language which has been absorbed into Indonesian. Another name for statues is murti or pratima, a picture or statue with the deity symbolizing. However, the word commonly used to refer to such an image is murti, which is defined as anything that has a certain form and boundaries, a form, body, or figure, a manifestation, incarnation, manifestation. The use of the word murti in the various Upanishads and Bhagavad-Gita shows that this form is the essence or essence. The flame is the murti of fire, and so on. Unfortunately, after being absorbed into the Indonesian language, the word Aka is interpreted as synonymous with the word statue or idol, and often has a negative connotation. Why would someone put faith in pieces of metal, wood or stone that were molded or engraved or sculpted as gods? They are nothing more than inanimate objects. There is actually a deep logic behind it all. God is the supreme power that is everywhere in this universe. Even though God is an abstract and unmanifest power, he is present in everything, every creature, every place, and at every opportunity. With evidence like this, he is also present in the Pratima. For this reason too, a Pratima is not godless. He is there according to the basic principle of his presence everywhere. For the common people, it is not easy to direct their thoughts and devotions to something abstract. A Pratima as a representation of God presents a point where devotees can focus their devotion on a mind that is constantly distracted. The Pratima becomes a spiritual focal point through which a devotee can direct his mind to an abstract God. The devotion of the people, faith, worship, and respect make Pratima as a representation of the gods to have the meaning of God. A human being is only a small spark of life with all the limitations of his spiritual and physical abilities. The ultimate power is a mind that is infinitely amazing that never existed in any human imagination. God in the form of a divine being is a spark in which a human being can feel satisfied relating and manifesting his beliefs in his little human way. The first 5 gods should be treated, respected, and revered as suggested by literature, in order to create a religious tradition for the systematic implementation of teaching. A system becomes a tradition because it is purified through the process of time. Beginners should start with Pratima worship. People can easily focus their devotion on visible gods who are in fact only abstract representations of the supreme power of God. Over a period of time, the minds of devotees become a little more spiritually educated. They can describe and feel the presence of a god even without seeing it. Even when they are not sitting in the presence of Pratima gods, they get it through their mind's eye. With a little more practice, it will take them to a stage where they can see God beyond the gods they worship. In the teachings of Hinduism, there are 4 ways to reach the perfection of life or the path to God, which is called Bhakti Marga. One of the 4 paths to God is Bhakti Marga. Bhakti Marga is the easiest way to do for all people. Bhakti Marga is often referred to as natural teaching. In reality, Bhakti Marga consists of 1. Apara Bhakti is love from someone who does not have a high level of purity. 2. Bhakti is the love of a person who already has a high level of purity. For a bhakta never thinks about God, but a bhakta always has a firm faith in believing that Hyang Widi exists and is single ESA. In realizing love, apara bhakti requires an object as a tool to worship Hyang Widi. And from here pratima is known as a manifestation or image tool so that the mind of an apara bhakti can be centered on God Almighty. Pratima is used only as a tool to focus thoughts on Hyang Widi, not as an object that is worshipped as alleged by other religions. An apara bhakti should also realize that pratima or deity is not God or God. Hinduism is neither polytheism nor the worship of stone, sculpture. In the scriptures it is stated, Ekameva Advitiyam Brahman, meaning, there is only one God, there is no second. For more information on Bhakti Marga, please read Bhakti Marga Yoga. The use of pratima is thought to have developed since the 9th century and ended until the 13th century. In the days of the Singasari and Majapahit kingdoms, the use of pratima, objects of worship, had decreased a lot. Meanwhile, what we have encountered today is only a temple, sangha fittings. A person, besides directly worshipping his creation, in expressing feelings of the heart, whether in the form of hopes, requests and goals to him, also uses nyasa. For ordinary people, symbolism has a very important place in appreciation, in the process of approaching God, Hyang Widi. Religious symbolism will produce artistic creativity and religious culture as well. Natural objects as manifestations of his manifestation, which are sanctified, chanted, and praised, are believed to produce magical, supernatural values that cannot be resolved by the common sense of the human mind. The supreme RSI of ancient times were consistent in living the life of the pre-Rastas, namely living a life by letting go of the attachments of physical gratification in the process of seeking one's identity towards God. So that the results of the contemplation of the ancient sages were manifested in the form of art, and God's character and function were applied in the form statues, pictures, pratima, ceremonies, languages, wali dances. Which has aesthetic value, symbolic value and spiritual value. Like what has been passed down by our previous ancestors, for example, the nature and function of God is an eradication of evil. It appears that the hand of the statue is symbolized by carrying an axe. The function of God is the origin of knowledge. It appears that the hand of the statue is symbolized by carrying the palm tree. The nature of God is a conditioning. It appears that the hand of the statue is carrying Siba, place of Tirtha, and is manifested and depicted with many hands according to its function and his greatness. Likewise, the symbols contained in the Bibantanan ceremony, for example, Daksina, symbol of the stana of Ida Hyang Widi, God. Meanwhile, the Paduka teacher offerings contain the value of the apology of the people. Bantan Parosan consists of red areca nut, symbol of Lord Brahma, green beetle leaf, symbol of Lord Vishnu, and white lime, symbol of Lord Shiva. Thus the universe is a result of his creation as his magic from God. Through religious teachings or sect, the essence of divinity is explained. The word sect, religion, is a group of people who have beliefs about the same religious views, which are different from the religious views commonly accepted by adherents of that religion. For example, the Shiva sect, the Buddha sect, the Vaisnava sect, the Sakta sect, the Census sect, the Bhairava sect, the Solar sect, and others that have their own path and identity, namely, there is Istatavada, God of worship, there are holy books, places of worship, holy people, holy days, the means used, and there are followers. Thus, someone who wants to know the essence and greatness of God is to become a follower of a sect, religion that is considered official by the government at that time, which is believed to be a guide in this life. Where the Brahmins from the sect are believed to be the recipients of revelations or as a liaison from the eternal realm and vice versa. That's the original Dharmic teachings of the original ancestors of the Indonesian archipelago. which was learned in the past in Svarnadvipa Sumatra depicted in Borobudur until now stored in Bali. Continues to section 15. By Santo Saba.